Good morning, everyone. It's time to go on the record.
I have my pink Shima vest.
Martha Coakley, the perceived Democratic frontrunner for governor, is out gathering endorsements and working delegates. Now, just 3 weeks before the state convention. How well will she do in Worcester? Coakley is our guest today, and we'll ask her that and a lot more. In the GOP governor's race, it looks like it'll be Charlie Baker and Mark Fisher on the primary ballot in September. How does that affect Baker's campaign strategy? We'll talk about that. And
should a statewide referendum to repeal the state's casino bill be on the ballot this fall? Your opinion?
From WCVB Boston, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill, today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. Thank you for joining us on OTR this morning. Our guest is Martha Coakley, one of the 5 Democrats who is running for governor and the state's current attorney general. Prior to becoming AG, she was district attorney of Middlesex County for 8 years. In 2010, she made an unsuccessful run for Ted Kennedy's vacant U.S. Senate seat, losing to Republican Scott Brown. Coakley is a graduate of Williams College, Boston University School of Law. She lives in Medford. Thank you for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Welcome back on the record.
Thank you.
So the SJC is now deliberating on whether you made the right decision to keep off the ballot a referendum question, which would make casinos illegal. Can you sort of very briefly explain the core of your argument?
Sure. We do a threshold inquiry on every single ballot question, and the presumption is that voters do get to decide many of these issues, but there are certain kinds of topics like funding or court issues that cannot be subject to ballot proposals. And there are a category that involve, for instance, implied contracts that do require some analysis. We knew when we looked at this question, it was relatively first impression. We made a decision based on what we thought the facts and the law required at the time in terms of the investment that had been made. But we also knew that whatever we had decided on or off the ballot, it would go to the Supreme Judicial Court. So we wrote a decision. We then facilitated with both sides the ability to get it to the court as soon as possible. And look, the important thing is to get it right. The court has heard arguments. They'll make a decision. And either way, we'll be happy with that decision.
So in other words, it would cost too many people money that they've already spent if this ballot question was approved?
It's not just about money. It is about the concept of when and how the legislature can enter into contracts that will be binding, that have damages and consequential damages, but not just money, and when the people can vote to repeal that. And I will actually look with great interest at the Supreme Court's decision, because this is an area that's brand new in some respects. We haven't addressed it before, and I think their decision will help us in the future on any question that's similar to this on whether it should go on a ballot or not.
Back in 2008, if memory serves, the dog racing was, how was it possible to kill dog racing through a referendum that an industry was effectively still alive then? I'm just curious in precedent, legal precedent.
Well, that was a more complicated issue in some respects, Ed, and it did have to do with the issue around dogs and the relationship and the treatment of dogs, and without going into all the details, we believe that that was distinguishable here. We will see if the Supreme Court agrees with us or not.
Do you think Supreme Court Justice Robert Cordy, who was a former gubernatorial staffer and as a private attorney fought on behalf of the casinos like Suffolk Downs, do you think he should recuse himself in this case?
Well, that issue of recusal is always the first instance the judges. If an issue is brought to a judge's attention, then he or she has to make that decision. I would not deem to make that decision for Judge Cordy or any of the judges at this stage. Key to this is disclosure, of course, and based upon any appearance of influence or conflict of interest, judges are required in the first interest to make that call.
During that hearing, he was pretty aggressive at questioning the people who want the ballot question. Do you think that raises eyebrows?
Well, first, I've learned to glean nothing from how and why a justice is questioned, whether it's the U.S. Supreme Court or ours. And I think the end will have to be in his decision. But if the issue is raised, and he is a very respected jurist, the matters before him, most judges know what they have to require to disclose and when they have to recuse themselves.
So you don't want to weigh in on this one?
You know, the first instance, it's his call.
You're a political consultant, Doug Rubin, also represents the Suffolk Downs Mohegan Sun Group. So can you honestly say that there is no connection between your decision to keep the casino ban off the ballot and that?
Absolutely. I mean, this is an issue we dealt with in the AG's office that started last spring before I even got in this race. There's no connection whatsoever to the decisions we made that I make as an attorney general related to my job there. And we were transparent about that. We were transparent about the argument. And as I said, we knew that whatever whatever we did, the court would get to look at it.
But the presence of Doug, doesn't that create just a visual?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so at all?
Absolutely not.
All right.
So if you win and you take office, would you replace Steve Crosby, and would you revisit any decisions he's made? You've already called, obviously, for him to step down as chairman.
Well, interestingly,
of the Gaming Commission.
Interestingly, as that is set up, the Gaming Commission is relatively independent. And so they do get to decide. He has a term of 7 years, and there are very strict circumstances under which, you know, he is removed. And so at this stage, not unlike what I just said about Judge Cordy, that decision about whether to resign or not is in his hands. And the statute was constructed that way. There are some circumstances under which a chairman could be removed, but I don't believe these are those.
But you know that if you're the governor and you appointed someone and you said, look, I think you need to hand in your resignation, the person is likely to do so, because without the support of the governor, nobody can get a lot done on Beacon Hill. So would you have that quiet talk with him?
Well, first of all, my concern has been whether or not, because he's recused now, and he did the right thing by recusing himself from the Boston matters, whether that commission can function appropriately. We're going to have an opportunity to see, and whether the other commissioners feel that they have the ability to make decisions, including the issue of a potential tie. They are a very conscientious committee, by the way.
So you wouldn't have that conversation with him if you were elected governor?
I certainly don't have the basis to say that now.
That is a very delicate issue. With four people voting, you have the very real possibility of a tie.
And the commission is undertaking to look at that now, because they want to be able to do their job well. I trust that commission. I trust Commissioner Crosby. I supported his appointment. There is a call by me and others to look at that. But now the question is, can this commission function? And we're going to know that relatively soon.
All right, you ready for the OTR pop quiz?
Yeah, of course.
Wow.
Usually people run for the hills when he says that.
I see the confidence in her eyes.
Well, we don't have much option here, do we?
In order of size, name the 4 largest cities in the state of Massachusetts. In largest first, and number 4 fourth.
Well, Boston.
Right.
Worcester.
Yep.
Springfield.
Yep.
Fourth is tricky. I'm going to guess New Bedford.
Fourth is Lowell with 106,000 people.
Okay.
A pay hike approved for state judges may spur an exodus from the bench that some fear could cause a slowdown in the judicial system. How much is the pay hike?
Well, there's a proposal that would put it up $10,000 or $15,000.
$30,000 more a year, and the pay hike brings an associate judge's salary to $160,000. Of the state's 411 judges, 36 could retire this year. We continue on the record with Martha Coakley. Stay with us.
Who's driving the Commonwealth's economy? A surprising answer today at noon.
We continue with Martha Coakley and the OTR Pop Quiz, and we're on question 3. A new federal highway report highlights structural problems in more than 4,000 Massachusetts bridges. Some 487 have been deemed structurally deficient. What is the estimated cost to fix those problems? And I'll give you some numbers. Is it $5 billion? Is it $10 billion? Or is it $12 billion?
I'm going to say $10 billion.
12.2.
It's a lot of money.
So if you're the governor, stand by.
Yeah, no, I know, and we need to fix them. Hopefully we'll get some federal help for that.
Speaking of the state bridge repairs, what is the current Massachusetts gas tax? The gas tax.
The percentage on the...
How many cents a gallon?
10 cents?
24 cents a gallon, up from 21. Next January will rise again based on the inflationary indexing. What Republican candidate recently commented, because, you know, whatever, to an Associated Press inquiry about his quality of his political credentials? Because, you know, whatever.
Scott Brown.
That sounds like it was a guess.
You nailed it. It is. Former U.S. Senator Scott Brown is now a candidate for U.S. Senate. By the way, do you have your eye on that race? Given
you know, not particularly. I've got my my work as Attorney General, which has been very busy, and my work running for governor, which I've been loving. And so, you know, other than what everybody else is watching, I haven't really...
Just out of the curiosity of what's Scott Brown up to these days?
Yeah, I mean, if it's in the news, I watch it, but I haven't really had any inside scoop on that.
Speaking of Republicans, Charlie Baker, who potentially could be your opponent if you win the Democratic primary, says there is no pay-to-play going on, despite Boston Globe reports that he gave Governor Chris Christie's state party $10,000 just months before the state pension plan there turned over $25 million to his investment firm. What's your reaction to that?
Well, this raises, I think, troubling concerns, obviously. And I think both under New Jersey law and the SEC that have jurisdiction over this should take a look at those allegations. One of the issues in this campaign and every campaign is about conflicts of interest, transparency. Voters should be able to know who they're voting for, who's supporting the super PACs, and what are the influences if people are going to be elected to office. So I think it's fair game to ask those questions, and I hope that they will be.
Do you have some questions as to whether he is technically a manager there, a managing partner, his role, or is it to you it's crystal clear?
Well, it seems that by how he's indicated his position that he is a partner at Catalyst, but that does have different definitions sometimes at the federal state level. But I think they're legitimate concerns. Whether or not they are absolutely violations of the law, what are the influences? And just look, as everybody's record now running for governor the last 4 years, 8 years should be under scrutiny.
And his explanations to date don't jive with you?
I think they raise troubling concerns.
Let's talk about the office that you currently hold, because someone is going to be the next AG in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So the question is, will you endorse your own assistant, Maura Healey, over Warren Tolman?
I've indicated, as I've got my own race, as many candidates do, I'm going to focus on that. I think, as I've said, talking about the opportunity for 4 new constitutional officers, we've got great choices at every level, and I always say, look, the AG's office is an important one. I hope people will pay attention to this race because it matters who your attorney general is.
But no endorsement this morning for, like, Maura Healey over Warren Tolman?
No, they're both running great races, and I'm going to let the voters decide on that.
So the Democratic Convention is now just 3 weeks away. What's your prediction on the percentage of delegates that you think you're going to get?
We are very confident that we will get our 15%. That is what the convention is really about, a way for activists, elected delegates, and others to get together and talk about issues, but also see who is going to get on the ballot. So we're very comfortable. We're happy with our work in the caucuses and our grassroots campaigning, and I think we'll do very well, at least 15%.
But isn't your real challenge to say that you're stronger than Steve Grossman and to get more delegates than he does, since he seems to be your strongest opponent right now?
You know, we're focused on the primary, Janet. We see the convention as a way to connect with delegates, to talk to supporters, to talk about the issues, to talk to uncommitted delegates. The actual numbers, I think, if you get 15%, I think the other numbers really don't matter.
The field is large. Would you suspect that there are currently 5? Would all 5 get onto the ballot, do you think, or no?
Well, it's an open question right now, and we don't really know where a lot of uncommitted delegates are going to go, so I think it's hard to say. If people get more than 15%, and you can do the math, it's hard for everybody to get 15 to 20%.
Yeah. You really think all 5 will make it to the ballot, though?
I'm not sure what will happen. I know we will.
Martha Coakley, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
My
Our
pleasure.
thanks to Martha Coakley, the Democrat running for governor, and the current AG for being our OTR guest today. Ahead, and you might want to stick around for this, Martha, because Ted Reinstein on the issue of casino repeal ballot question as we OTR continue.
Some folks might have had good intentions in the first place, but things didn't work out the way they thought, and now they want to reevaluate.
What's the future for casinos in Massachusetts? Unclear. The state Supreme Court has now heard arguments on whether or not to allow a statewide referendum question on the ballot this fall that would repeal the state's casino bill. They'll announce their decision early this summer. For its part, the state says that would be a terrible idea. What's your opinion? Do you personally feel like voters should have an opportunity to repeal the casino bill?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, I guess voters have a right to do anything, right?
I do. I think you should, yeah.
It wouldn't bug me.
No?
No.
You'd be fine with it being on the ballot?
Yes.
It should definitely be on the bill if they can get enough petitions and enough signatures on petitions and that sort of thing.
What do you say to those who say, what about all those people who've already put up millions of dollars in money they can't get back?
What I'm thinking about is that the people that don't have the money and are going to spend money they don't have.
So put it on the ballot?
Absolutely.
That's our launching point for the OTR Political Roundtable this morning. Let me introduce our panelists. Democrat Marianne Marsh is with us, and Republican Jennifer Nasser is with us as well. Ladies, thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Welcome to OTR this morning.
So you heard Martha Coakley this morning. If the SJC rules against her on the casino ballot question, how much damage do you think this will do to her campaign? Jennifer, let's start with you.
I think it will do some damage in the Democratic primary because, one, she'll come across as a defender of the big casino companies. Two, it will be another high-profile loss for her, in addition to Tim Cahill and probation department head John O'Brien. And the third thing is, it seems like she's against the people's will to speak out and on what they want. And so I do think that there are repercussions for her.
Can the Republicans make something out of this, Marianne?
I don't think so. If there's any political risk, it's with progressives who are so important at the convention and in the primary. And if it goes against her, I think they're going to probably forget about it. But I think that's also why she rolled out a bunch of progressive endorsements this week. Mass Equality, Planned Parenthood, SEIU, all came out for her, and that helps with progressives.
Let's talk about Steve Crosby. How much pressure is the governor under to remove Steve Crosby, Marianne?
Well, Patrick's rebuke of Crosby led to his recusal. So that tells you everything right there. So the pressure is mounting. Everyone running for governor, Democrat and Republican, have come out against him. If there's even one small misstep at this point, he is gone.
Jennifer, what's your read?
Well, I think since it took Governor Patrick, what, 6 months, 7 months to get rid of Olga Roche from the Department of Children and Families, that this is something completely different. I think if he acts any quicker on this than he did on that, there's going to be a little bit of an uproar as far as who is he really concerned about. And I just think that most of the pressure here is coming from the mayor and from the casino, the anti-casino advocates.
The Olga Roche point is an interesting one, and I want to be very sensitive as I navigate through that, because lives were affected in the Olga Roche decision. I mean, this is a casino ballot. It's a different thing, but nonetheless, is there a lesson in there, Marianne? The fact that in the end, Olga Roche has resigned.
I think in all matters, it's always better to address things as soon as you can and as soon as you have the facts. I think for some of these things, most people think action could have been taken sooner. On this one, there may be one more shoe to drop, and it's worth waiting to see if that's the case.
Can't afford another repeat, right, Jennifer?
He's a lame duck governor. Does he really care?
So Charlie Baker, he's under enormous pressure to get a better handle on his campaign and the party apparatus at this particular point in time. He says he was not a managing director of his company, which landed a $25 million contract from the state of New Jersey just months after he personally gave Governor Christie's party $10,000. Can he maneuver his way around this, Marianne?
I think he has two issues here. One, he's saddled with Scott Brown's hand-picked executive director of the Republican Party, who got elected in a balloting approach eerily similar to what happened to Mark Fisher at the Republican convention. And on this matter about the donations and all this, this is well-trod territory. The 2012 election was all about Romney and Bain. So if you're in any kind of financial business and you're a candidate running for office, the perception is reality, and that's where this is going. It can't be a surprise to Charlie. It can't be a surprise to his campaign, and I can't imagine it's going to change.
But it's more serious questions. You heard Martha Coakley this morning. I mean, she thinks that there are serious pay-to-play questions here, that the SEC should intervene, that there should be a federal investigation. Jennifer.
So number one, I don't think Charlie Baker is worried about the party apparatus at this point, because believe me, that is probably the last thing on his mind. He's got to appeal to moderate voters and not care about what the party's up to. Number one. Number two, I believe that Charlie Baker, when he went over to General Catalyst to do whatever executive in residence program he was doing, General Catalyst has been around long enough, and they know, and the private equity world all understands what the rules are. Everyone has a lawyer. Charlie Baker is also smart enough that he knew he wanted to do this again, that he wanted to run again. I don't think that either party would have ever set themselves up for any situation where there would have been something that would have even smelled fishy. I think it's totally fine, and I think that it comes under any regulations or rules or anything else.
So you believe that he legally snaked his way around the barriers and the cones?
I don't think there was any snaking. I think it was completely legal, and what he did was a donation to Governor Christie, who is always helpful to Charlie Baker, and that there was nothing else.
Marianne, good or bad for Charlie Baker that Mark Fisher is now in the gubernatorial race?
Bad, and let me counter what Jen said. I mean, really bad. I mean, the fact is, you know, if you're going to kill off your opponent, kill him dead. Mark Fisher is not dead, okay? They wounded him, and that makes him really dangerous in the primary. You always want to run a general election if you can avoid a primary. Charlie Baker not only has a primary now, he's got a guy who can do real damage to him, who's going to go get him, and that's because of the bungled party.
So a bungled party, Jennifer, go.
Bungled.
Wow. And I'm going to say, I love the fact that Fisher is in this. It gives Charlie Baker an opportunity every single time that Fisher says something for Charlie to appeal to those moderate voters that ultimately he needs to get in November. He doesn't have to care about what goes on in September. Fisher barely made it on the ballot. That's the great thing about having him on there. If you can't get 15% or you just barely get 15%, you're never going to win overwhelmingly.
As a Democrat, I love it, and $1 million to that too.
Oh, we're just getting started. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Who had the best week in politics? Jennifer.
Deval Patrick did, because the lame duck governor, who's done nothing else, is now taking a trade mission with 50 members of the business community to Dubai and Israel on the taxpayer dime.
Marianne, I have a feeling you don't agree with her. Who had the best week?
Hillary Clinton. Karl Rove committed the political equivalent of a drive-by shooting, and she went from being a target to a sympathetic figure with one line, "Thank you very much."
Here we are. We're approaching Memorial Day weekend. We're approaching the start of summer. Is this an igniter for the political campaign for the summer, or is this going to be quiet until Labor Day?
No, campaigns are won in June, July, and August. That's how you win September and November. Never.
Never. Never forget. The political wheel is always turning. We'll see you next week.
Emily Reamer with the secret to GMA success, Monday on the Eye.